The best gaming companies know that how you treat your customers is very important. To them, consumer goodwill is actually valuable, more valuable than, say, selling a bunch of microtransactions. Here for this conversation is Mr. Henry Cooper.
Hello there.
So let's get into this. We're talking about CD Projekt Red. We're talking about Cyberpunk 2077. What do we have?
It's just easier to say nice things about them, isn't it? Recently, there was a big event in Australia called PAX Melbourne. You know, it's big.
Everyone knows what PAX
Everyone knows what that is. One of the studio heads of CD Projekt spoke with GameSpot, and that guy is called John Mames. I'm going to say Mames. So he's the studio head of the Krakow studio in obviously Poland. That's where CD Projekt are based. And just a quick background on him. He's been with the company since 2011 and acted as a producer on The Witcher 2, so he's pretty important to the company. And the Krakow studio is making about a third of the whole game because development is spread out with different studios covering different things. And that studio is covering a bunch of cinematic and narrative-based stuff, and they've put together this new thing called Scene System, but we're not really going to elaborate on that, but that's all about immersion and not taking you out of the experience during cutscenes and whatnot. But the more exciting stuff comes in what he actually said to GameSpot. And they spoke about a number of things which we'll briefly bounce on before we get to the good stuff. So he said about multiplayer again, which is not coming at launch, which I think we did know, but the plan is that it may come later on in some shape or form. Talks about censorship in Australia because they're quite strict on sex and drugs being depicted in certain ways in games, like whether or not it's rewarding for you to be violent and all that kind of stuff.
A quick note on that, he's confident that they're going to get around those restrictions in Australia and there won't be any limitations on the game there.
Yeah, so for you Australian fans of the game, fear not. Talks about other upcoming titles for the studio and the publisher, which involve future Cyberpunk or future Witcher projects, which are all possible, or brand new IPs, because they're kind of trying to push to become a multi-game AAA studio.
Yeah, so they can work on multiple games at the same time because they've recently expanded their Warsaw offices in order to facilitate that.
And then briefly talks about Nintendo Switch support, which, as a surprise to no one, will probably not be happening. But the more interesting stuff is where he starts talking about those dreaded microtransactions. And generally, when microtransactions are mentioned, it's not very good. But if CD Projekt are mentioning them, it's probably going to be a bit more interesting. So what he said was, I think it's a bad idea to do microtransactions after you release a game. It seems like it's very profitable though. It's probably a hard decision for the guy that runs the business to decide if we should do it or not. But if everyone hates it, why would we do something like that and lose the goodwill of our customers? That's such a obvious thing.
Yeah.
Right? Why piss off your consumers? But everyone seems to be doing it in these big AAA publishers anyway.
That's right. I mean, it surely indicates that they value the goodwill of consumers so highly that they're not willing to try and nickel and dime people by isolating certain parts of your game, whether it's skins, whether it's weapons or whatever, and sell those separately back to the consumer once they've already purchased the game. They value the goodwill of the customers above that nickeling and diming that goes on so often in the games industry these days. A lot of big publishers have turned to this type of monetization model in order to supplement their revenue where they've already sold the game to people, and it's not hard to see where he's kind of stabbing the knife here and who he's kind of targeting with these type of comments.
Yeah, it definitely seems like an indirect dig at certain publishers like Activision, who are
not to name names, but fucking Activision's the worst.
Yeah, I'm not afraid, because there's companies that do bad things, but they've got a particular name for post-launch microtransactions these days, because they added them into Crash Team Racing recently and Black Ops 4 not too long ago.
Yeah, this type of thing is particularly nefarious, right? Because they allow reviews to go out, they launch the game, they allow reviews to go out, they even lie beforehand to say microtransactions aren't coming. Yeah, this is the thing that they said in June. Actually, it was at E3 this year that Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled, the team stated the game would avoid microtransactions in a sit-down during a hands-on event at E3, like I said. So they said that with their mouths to people, to the press, and then 2 months after launch, launched in June. In August, the Activision announced that microtransactions would be coming to the game. Now, that kind of lie and deceit, not only did they get around the fact that reviews don't reflect that there's microtransactions in the game, so they avoid any controversy there, they also lie into people's faces about this type of shit just to make extra money. So they try and get as many people on board by lying beforehand and saying there's no microtransactions coming. And once you've got the game, once you're playing, they don't give a fuck. They've got your money. They're going to take as much opportunity as possible to make money out of you to try and squeeze your wallet. And it's that type of thing that consumers remember, right? Activision's promises, they're worthless now. Their word is absolutely worthless to us consumers now. We know whatever they say about microtransactions, it's likely to be a lie. And we know that any game that you buy off them, they're likely to throw in, if it's not at launch, they're likely to throw in microtransactions post-launch. So therefore, if you're a consumer who doesn't like that sort of thing, Activision is just a no-go area, whereas CD Projekt Red don't see it like that at all.
I feel like this is actually less of a good thing in favor of them and more a bad thing against the rest of the industry, because why would we do something like that and lose the goodwill of our customers? That should be your neutral standpoint, so that's where you start from. So they're at the starting line, but everyone else is so far behind because they're doing such bad shit all the time.
Yeah, we
have to highlight this as being the good thing when really everyone else is just so much worse.
I had this conversation in the office yesterday that we've seen so many developers fall foul of controversy recently over the last few years. So many of our more beloved developers, Bethesda, we're talking BioWare, and others. Like this is a couple of instances. I honestly don't remember off the top of my head the rest of them, but there's so many. You can probably let me know down in the comments. Blizzard's another one. There's so many developers that have done some dodgy shit, said some dodgy shit, and just broken their reputation with their customers over the last 3 or 4 years. It's so very rare to hear a company come out and say that they value the customer's goodwill above even money. It's very rare, that is, and which is why CDPR in my book gets held higher than most.
They go on a bit further in the interview and talk about DLC, which is kind of stuff we've heard before, but again, it's good news. So the quote is, and then this is a semi-paraphrasing what he said: "The Witcher 3's free DLC with big paid expansions was a good model for us. It worked pretty well for The Witcher 3. I don't see why we wouldn't try to replicate that model with Cyberpunk 2077. We're not talking about that yet, but it seems like that would be the smart way to go." So again, that's just saying how they're planning to do paid full-scale expansions and probably some free stuff as well, which I think they've suggested in the past. And if you don't know, The Witcher 3's DLC model was 2 major DLC expansions. One, the Hearts of Stone expansion, which was $9.99 at launch, and then Blood and Wine, which was $19.99, so it was a little bit bigger, and then a total of 16 free minor DLC. So that had like armor sets, alternate skins for other characters, new quests, new contracts, and a new game plus mode. So it's just smaller scale free stuff, and then some bigger, more expensive stuff.
Yeah, worth the value money. And you think about these skins that these other games are trying to sell these days in terms of, maybe $6 or $7 for a skin on a character, whereas you might pay $10 for a full expansion like Hearts of Stone and The Witcher 3. It just goes to show where the value lies in these transactions. Microtransactions are pretty much worthless, but you pay so much for them. It's an absolute scandal, really, if you ask me.
Then it goes on a bit more to say some interesting stuff about how he feels about the game development process. So he says, "To see this stuff come to life and be part of that process is really interesting. It kind of becomes your life. You sign up for that when you get into this business. And I don't mean to sound too arrogant, but it's kind of like a higher art form in a way. So cool to be part of that process." A higher art form, I think, is a really interesting thing to say, because it shows, for starters, how much he really cares about what he does and the whole company ethos at CD Projekt. But the fact that most media doesn't consider gaming to be any form of art at all, it's just basic entertainment, there's no inherent artistic value to be drawn from it, but he considers it a higher form, and that's because you build all of the tech that goes into it. That's all the mechanics, all the art assets, all the writing, all of those different disciplines come in together to make a bigger art form, and I totally agree.
And it's this sort of sentiment that permeates the whole of the company with CDPR, and I recently bought, actually yesterday, the Witcher 3 Switch version, and as with the original Witcher 3 physical package, you got a thank you note in the box itself from CDPR, and I'd like to read that out just to give you an indication of how highly regarded we are as a consumer base by CDPR. Now, we'd like to massively thank you for buying our game. As a studio, we think there's a lot of value in honest and transparent communication. So honestly and transparently, without you supporting us, there would be no us to begin with. It's because of you that we can make a living doing what we love, telling stories through video games. In return, we work as hard as we can to bring you extraordinary games. We hope you'll see that reflected in Wild Hunt. Yours truly, everyone at CDPR. Now, if that doesn't communicate how much they value us and how much they really appreciate being able to do what they do for a living, because they do consider it art, and the fact that they love doing it, there's a mutual beneficial relationship there. They value us, we value them, and it's almost unheard of in the modern gaming industry, I'll tell you, because all these greedy corporations, all they're focused on is making money. CDPR will make a lot of money off the old games because they're awesome, The Witcher 3 and that, but they'll also make a lot of money off the upcoming Cyberpunk and all the other games that they release because of how well regarded they are and how everybody trusts them to produce value for money game that's of a high standard and that they won't be nickel and dimed.
Yeah, they've literally built their entire brand around being the good guys in the industry, and it's totally working for them.
Yeah, but they definitely stand out in this.
Yeah, in comparison to everyone else being so bad.
And it's just an example of how valuable consumer goodwill is, right? I mean, this is the third time I've bought The Witcher 3, and I've never really connected with it. I've never really enjoyed. I've never completed it. I've got like 3 or 4 hours in on a couple of occasions. I bought it for the second time, having not had a great experience in the first instance, because of all the positive word of mouth and the positive things other people were saying about the game. And I was like, well, if everyone else loves it, maybe it's just me. Like, maybe the problem is me.
What am I missing?
Yeah. Maybe I'm the problem here. So I tried the game again. I couldn't connect with it. But I bought it for the third time on the Switch because, and this is very important, because I love CDPR and what they stand for in the industry. And that is where, and how they value me and how they regard me is more valuable to me than actually enjoying a game. No, I mean, honestly. But I am going to try play the game. I play it for a couple of hours and I actually started enjoying it because it's a more relaxed experience on the Switch, and I really think I'm going to get the most out of it this time. But I bought the game 3 times. That's like 150 quid that I've donated to this one game that I haven't really connected with, I'll put it that way. But all that is showing my extra support for this company, whereas other people might decide to buy microtransactions and shit like that, which would make me feel dirty if I supported a company in that way. But lo and behold, that just goes to show if I'm like this, other people must be too. And so because I like the way that they treat people, I'm willing to support them regardless of how much I connect with their game.
And The Witcher 3 is really excellent, so eventually you'll click it.
Here's me. I know it's me. It must be me. It must be me, because otherwise the whole world is wrong, which can't be the case, right? It must be me. I'm the one that's crazy here. I know.
But enough of us brown-nosing CD Projekt. It's obvious we love them, so let us know down in the comments to make sure you do, because we all know you do. But have you bought The Witcher 3 on Switch, or is the specifications too low? How excited for Cyberpunk 2077 are you? How mad would you be if they put microtransactions in it, pre-launch or post-launch? Make sure to let us know, leave a like, hit subscribe and all that, you know what to do. Go on over to patreon.com/prettygoodgame to support the content we create. I've been Henry, he's been Gaz, we'll see you next time. Bye for now.